deferred it, yeah.
Good evening. I would like to call to order today, May 17, 2022, Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance as well as those watching at home or streaming online. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Miller,
Here.
Director Richardson,
Here.
Director Webb, Director Peck,
Here.
Director Wright,
Here.
Director Wyrick,
Present.
Director Compuris, Director Phillips,
Present.
Director Adcock,
Present.
Vice Mayor Hines,
Present.
Mayor Scott.
Present. We'll now start, ask Ward 1 City Director Virgil Miller to start us off with invocation.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could, Mayor, I'd like to start with a moment of silence to recognize the victims and the families of that horrific, senseless shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Orange County, California. Please. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we ask that you put a circle of protection around our city and around all the residents in our city. Father, we ask that you touch the hearts of those who harbor ill will towards their fellow humans. Father, we ask you touch their hearts, and where you find lies, you replace it with truth. Where you find evil, you replace it with goodness. Where you find unrest, you replace it with peace. Where you find despair, you replace it with hope. Where you find envy, you replace it with kindness. And where you find hate, you replace it with love. Father, we ask that you be with us tonight as we go about the awesome task of the governance of our city. We pray for your wisdom and your guidance. And Father, with all things, we will be careful to give you all the honor, all the glory, and all the praise. Amen.
Amen. May you all please stand for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic,
And to the republic for which you stand,
one nation,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to take this time now for our presentation. It's a great honor to recognize Hanam City, South Korea, and the city of Little Rock for Arkansas Sister City's 30th anniversary day proclamation. I would ask that members of the Sister Cities Commission please approach the podium. I know there are a few members that are here today. Mr. Brandon Morris, who is the chairman of the Sister Cities Commission. Mr. Brandon, would you introduce some of the members of the commission before we read the proclamation when it starts? And also, members of the board, we believe we've shared the link with our sister city members of Hanam City, South Korea. I believe they're online listening and watching with us today. So the jewels of technology where we're communicating. Now, I don't know what time it is there. If they're watching, it's probably pretty early or pretty late, but we'll figure that out. Chairman Morris.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Scott. It is actually 9 a.m. Tomorrow morning in Hanam City, South Korea, but we did invite them to this presentation, so thank you very much. I have here with me Commissioner Margie Raimondo. She recently was appointed to the commission by the city board, and I also have here with me Travis Trey Rowan, who was recently appointed to the commission. So thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're grateful for the time and the effort that you put towards this commission and representing our city. We thank you for working longstanding with the Mayor's Youth Council for many, many years and ensuring that many of our youth get an opportunity to see things outside of Little Rock, outside of Arkansas, and across the globe. I know City Director Ken Richardson has been a participant along on different trades missions as well with Newcastle. And before I read the proclamation, City Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor, thank you for that acknowledgement. I'm not trying to date myself, but I remember when we had their first delegation here, back when we were experiencing the rise in violent activity and gang activity, and I think they visited us during one of our Little Rock Task Force for the Prevention of Youth Violence Operation Safe Summer initiatives back in 1992. And I think they provided some insight and certainly provided a different set of lens to look through in terms of how we address these issues. And I think that the connection that was made there will be forever. And I remember that as being part of the Little Rock Prevention Task Force for the Prevention of Youth Violence as we began our Operation Safe Summer, which eventually led to our prevention, intervention, and treatment efforts. So I think that a lot of the insights that we got from them kind of helped us move forward to get to the point today where we are now, where we have a more comprehensive approach and a more clearly defined thought of how we address violence beyond policing and bigger jails. And I want to thank their congregation. If anybody that's watching that was part of that delegation, I want to thank you for your wisdom and insight that you provided our citizens here in Little Rock. Back in 1992, I think it was in July 2nd or 3rd, 1992, during one of our, and this is the exact building, actually. We used to have our task force meetings in this building right here, and Mr. Moore can attest to, I think Bruce was an intern there then in City Hall, and we had our task force for the prevention of youth violence in this room here, and we came together as a cross collaboration of citizens to figure out ways to address gang activity and violent crimes. And more importantly, I think Dean can attest to this, that laid the framework and the groundwork and the bridge work for us to develop prevention, intervention, and treatment initiative as part of a holistic approach to address crime and criminal activity in our community. So I want to thank you, Mayor, for acknowledging me, and thank our commissioners for being here tonight, and thank you guys for the wonderful work that you guys have done and continue to do, and I expect you guys will continue to do more and more great work on behalf of the city of Little Rock.
Thank you so much, Director Richardson. I'll now read the proclamation. Whereas May is recognized as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and whereas on May 19, 1992, the city of Little Rock took an important step in strengthening the commitment not only Little Rock's Asian American and Pacific Islander community, but also to solidifying stronger bonds with the Republic of Korea when it formalized its sister city relationship with Hanam City, South Korea. And whereas the agreement between Little Rock was facilitated locally by Sharon Priest, who was Little Rock's mayor at the time, and by Grandmaster H.U. Lee, the founder of ATA International. And whereas over the past 30 years, Little Rock and Hanam City have enjoyed a robust relationship, which has included 11 outbound and 10 inbound exchanges focused on education, economic development, and culture. And whereas more than 200 students have participated in 10 youth exchanges, and in 2022, a virtual exchange was launched, which involves youth from the Hanam City Youth Center, as well as members of the Little Rock Mayor's Youth Council. And whereas during 2020, Hanam City provided masks and other supplies to support the Little Rock community, schools, and veterans during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas through the sister cities relationship, Hanam City provided significant financial support as well as cultural support for the Korean War Veterans Memorial, which is located in MacArthur Park. And whereas Little Rock and Hanam City have participated in a sculpture exchange with Little Rock sculptor Michael Warwick, youth being installed in Hanam City, and Hanam City presenting the sculpture Blooming, which is now located in MacArthur Park and was dedicated in 2019. And whereas while we are grateful for all the people from Hanam City who have played a role in strengthening this relationship, we wish to pay special tribute to Kyuk Sung Han, who has worked for decades to foster this bond. And whereas May 19, 2022 marks 30 years since the formal signing of the Sister Cities Agreement between Hanam City, South Korea, and Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, therefore, I, Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby proclaim May 19, 2022 as Hanam City, South Korea, and Little Rock, Arkansas Sister City's 30th Anniversary Day. Let's give them a round of applause. Chairman Morris, any final comments?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Scott. And thank you to the City Board of Directors as well. Again, we appreciate the recognition and we're happy to serve as ambassadors for the City of Little Rock. Our mission focuses on cultivating cultural, educational, and economic development relationships with international cities. We have formal relationships with 5 cities around the world, including Kaohsiung, Taiwan, Changchun, China, Caxias do Sul, Brazil, Newcastle upon Tyne, England, and of course, Hanam City, South Korea. Our relationship with Hanam is unique for all the reasons you just named in the proclamation, and I'm certainly looking forward to the next 30 years. I've only been chair of this commission since 2021, which is when I also became co-liaison for Hanam. So I've not had the opportunity to visit or host a delegation from Korea, but I've already immersed myself in their culture. I'd like to acknowledge former Mayor Sharon Priest for signing the official Sister Cities Agreement with Hanam. I'd also like to acknowledge my fellow commissioners, but specifically former commissioners Melanie Berman, Robert Kuhn, Bob Callens, and Dr. Naomi Rogers for serving as liaisons with Hanam and providing me with insight on how we can continue to nurture this lasting bond between our cities. Let me also thank Director Doris Wright for serving as our liaison for the Sister Cities Commission, and Kendra Pruitt, James Owen, and Bridget Newsom from the Mayor's Office for all their support during the pandemic and their continued support as we begin in-person activities. Finally, I'd like to say hello again to our friends in Hanam City who are watching our live stream tonight or this morning for them, and thank them for our relationship as well, specifically our liaison, April Park, there in Hanam City. So again, thank you everyone, and we appreciate the acknowledgement.
Thank you so much, Brandon. We do appreciate you. Well, great. We'll transition. I'll get you guys this real quick. Give them a round of applause. So Trey Day, you're gonna talk about the 30th anniversary on Power 92? I got you. All right. All right, everyone. We're now gonna transition. I believe City Director Peck wants to make a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is regarding separate item number 14, Z-5817-K, the Cantrell West Retail Center, PCD. I'd like to request that this project go back to the Planning Commission. We actually talked about this briefly last Tuesday, and it's because considerable changes have been made. Staff is still recommending denial. Mr. Reese has made some changes, but the neighbors feel like they have not been kept in the loop. So I would like to send this back to the Planning Commission with some specific instructions and or requests that they specifically look at traffic concerns, the density issue, and uses that the neighborhood can live with, so there's a unified development.
I understand that to be a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Present.
Ayes have it. It will go back to planning. Thank you so much, City Director Peck. We have 3 modifications for tonight's agenda. Item 15 is being deferred until June 7th, 2022, at the applicant's request. Item 16 is being deferred until June 7th, 2022, at the applicant's request. Item 17 is being deferred until June 7th, 2022, at the applicant's request. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Move.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to set June 7th, 2022 as the date of public hearing on the request to abandon the South Cedar Street right-of-way and abutting street and alley right-of-way located from the south right-of-way line of Plateau Street to the south right-of-way line of West 7th Street between Jack Stevens Drive right-of-way and UAMS UAMS Boulevard right-of-way in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, a resolution to set June 7th, 2022 as the date of public hearing on the request to abandon the portion of Rockard Street right-of-way between the East 8th Street and East 9th Street, the portion of Fletcher Street right-of-way between East 7th Street and East 8th Street, and a portion of the alley right-of-way within Block 5, McLean's Addition in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Boyles Construction Incorporated in amount not to exceed $5,753,117.94 for the Bowman Road, Canis Road Improvement Project, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Delta Fire and Safety in an amount not to exceed $76,274 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of fire protective helmets for the Little Rock Fire Department, and for the purposes, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, in support of the goals and objectives of the South End Improvement Plan revision, and for the purposes, a resolution to appoint Dr. Sybil Jordan Hampton to the Central Arkansas Library System Board of Trustees, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with TCO Safety in the total amount of $126,406.74 for the purchase of ballistic vests for the Little Rock Police Department, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Township Builders Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,352,244 for the Reservoir Road Improvement Project, and for the purposes, funding the 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. That concludes the consent
Move
agenda.
for the adoption of the consent agenda.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Want to take this time just to acknowledge the men and women of the South End Neighborhood Association. If you guys will stand. And just know you guys worked hard. Director Miller, you want to give any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that it's been a pleasure to get to meet the members of the South End Neighborhood Association group. They've educated me, and I need the education about all of the challenges and the improvements that need to take place south of Roosevelt. I think it's, Ward 1 is such a large ward geographically, and it's so diverse. I think it's time that the South End get its due of attention, and I'm counting on you, the members of the South End Neighborhood Group, to hold me accountable. You have my number, and you know how to get in contact with me, and Mayor, I've heard you say this, that friends will tell you the truth.
Whole wide truth.
Nothing but the truth. And so I need the truth. And so please don't hesitate to contact me when there's something that I need to be brought, that's something that needs to be brought to my attention. And I just am so privileged to get the chance to work with such gifted and talented individuals that care so much about the community. And of course, the community is made up of nothing but the people that are in the community. So if it's a good community, that means it's great people, and you all are great people. Thank you, Mayor, for letting me have a word.
Awesome. Just want to say congratulations for the work that you guys have done to get to this point, and just want to make sure we acknowledge you all. Thank you. And to the members of the board, I just want to take this time to acknowledge what we've done together just in the recent passing of the $15 minimum wage policy for the city of Little Rock, and what that's going to do for our employees. And so just want to say thank you to the members of the city board for leading and forwarding this progressive policy that does the right thing for our most precious assets, with our team members that are doing this great work. So thank you to members of the city board. All right, Madam Clerk, if you would please read the grouped items.
An ordinance to amend the West Fuchs Planning District located at 19,300 Lawson Road from residential low density to commercial, and for the purposes, an ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to repeal ordinance number 21,594 of June the 19th, 2018, to revoke a planned commercial district titled 818 West Capitol Short Form PCD, and to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, And for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and establish a planned district commercial titled Wellington Plaza Event Center PDC located at 222 Wellington Hills Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. And for the purposes, an ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 22,079 of December 21st, 2021 to adjust the fiscal year 2022 budget ordinance to reflect expenditure adjustments for the general fund, street fund, and waste disposal fund to provide non-uniform full-time employees a hiring salary at a minimum of $15 an hour, to declare an emergency, and for other purposes, first reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it, second reading.
An ordinance to amend the West Fouche Planning District located at 19,300 Lawson Road from residential low density to commercial. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to repeal ordinance number 21,594 to revoke a planned commercial district titled 818 West Capitol short form PCD and to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned district commercial titled Wellington Plaza Event Center PDC located at 222 West Wellington Hills Road. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 22,079 to adjust the fiscal year 2022 budget ordinance to reflect expenditure adjustments for the street fund, general fund, street fund, and waste disposal fund to provide non-uniform full-time employees a hiring salary at a minimum of $15 an hour, to declare an emergency, second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second. There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it, third reading.
An ordinance to amend the West Fouche Planning District located at 19,300 Lawson Road. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to repeal ordinance number 21,594 to revoke a planned commercial district titled 818 West Capitol short form PCD and to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned district commercial titled Wellington Plaza Event Center, PDC, located at 222 Wellington Hills Road. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 22,079 to adjust the fiscal year 2022 budget ordinance to reflect expenditure adjustments for the general fund, street fund, and waste disposal fund to provide non-uniform full-time employees a hiring salary at a minimum of $15 an hour, to declare an emergency, third and final reading.
We've had three readings. We have Mr. Steve Owens, Sr. For item number 10. And board members, a bit of I think I got ahead of my skis on spoke a little early on the $15 an hour. So hopefully I was speaking that into existence. I'm hoping that you guys still vote for it. Mr. Owens, Sr.
Thank you, Mayor and directors. I'm Steve Owens Sr. I'm the father of my daughter is property owner, and my son-in-law is also the property owner of the property that is just north of this property. More importantly than that, I'm also the grandfather of their two daughters, one that's 4 and one that's 1.5, that live on the property. My daughter and son-in-law bought the property 4 years ago. Their property is 26 acres. It's zoned R2. They bought it to raise their children, our grandchildren. The property in question, which is just to the south, that is wanting to be rezoned C3, is approximately 55 feet from their workshop and playground area. Obviously, as homeowners, they want to protect their property and keep it zoned R2. Respectfully ask that you consider the fact that that area in question off of Marsh Road, all of that is R2. There's just one small section, that corner section of Marsh Road and Lawson Road that is C3, and then this property right next to it is wanting to go to C3. We would respectfully ask that property stay zoned R2. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, directors.
Thank you so much, Mr. Owen. Director Phillips, I believe you have a question in your hand.
Sorry, Mayor, that was for, I'm premature. Sorry about that. I'll take my hand down.
All right. Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor, I want to thank both you and Mr. Moore for the salary adjustment that we just made for non-uniform employees. Those of us who served with her, the late great Director Hendricks, that was a theme of hers, a constant theme of her throughout her term on this board, making sure that class of employees got, I think, an adequate, in her opinion, adequate salary or competitive salary, or a salary that would really match some of the work that some of them have been doing. So I want to thank both you and Bruce for making that adjustment, and my colleagues for passing that, because that is certainly one of the things that Director Hendricks talked about constantly throughout her term when she served on the board here. And I want to thank both of you guys for bringing that into reality. And Mayor, you speaking into the existence before we'd even taken a vote on it. But thank you guys for that work. That's really, really important to that class of that classification of employees that we have who work on behalf of the city, who sometimes feel undervalued and unappreciated. I think this adjustment right here will counter that I think that misfeeling or that thought of underappreciation or being devalued. I think we just made an appropriate step to really counter that claim, that misinformation that spread sometimes unfortunately throughout our city employees. So thank you guys for making that, bringing that before us, and thank my colleagues for voting in support of that. And I'm sure they're going to be thankful as well.
Thank you so much, and our pleasure. Just before we go to the vote, are there any questions? I know it was group items, and Mr. Owen Sr. Did present. Just make sure there's no other questions from members of the board. Seeing none. Again, no other questions. Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please.
Mayor, you have an emergency clause on 13.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. There's an emergency clause on item number 13. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number, 14 was deferred, 15, 16, 17 was deferred. We'll now transition. Madam Clerk, if you would read item number 18.
An ordinance to call a special election for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for the purpose of submitting to the electors of the city the questions of issuing bonds for various capital improvements and prescribing other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes, first reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to call a special election for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for the purpose of submitting to the electors of the city the question of issuing bonds for various capital improvements and prescribing other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes, second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to call a special election for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for the purpose of submitting to the electors of the city the question of issuing bonds for various capital improvements and prescribing other matters relating thereto, and for the purpose, third and final reading.
We've had three readings. Director Adcock, Director Phillips, and Director Wyrick. In that order.
Yes. Mayor, last week we made an amendment to this, and I just want to make sure that this final copy has the amendment that we made last week in it.
Mr. Moore?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
It took out the word new.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Director Adcock. Director Phillips, then Director Wyrick.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. I want to follow up, and I guess it's kind of conversation for my colleagues, something that I brought up last week and a couple of weeks before, as it relates to, and I guess it's really applies to the infrastructure dollars, or the street improvement dollars, that $40 million. I brought this up a couple of times and hadn't really got a resolution, and I understand it may be a policy issue for me and my colleagues to decide, so I'm bringing it back up. I'm still unsure the best way for us to determine how to divvy up that $40,500,000 $100,000 in street improvement bonds. When I brought this up a couple of weeks ago, Vice Mayor Hines said, hey, we can all work together, and I'm a believing better type person, an optimistic person, but try to root that in some reality. And I'm concerned, and I'm gonna just pick on Director Hines Vice Mayor Hines, since he brought it up last couple weeks ago. I'm concerned that if, as an at-large director, if I have suggestion of constituents reach out to me saying they want certain street improvements, and those certain street improvements do not align with a ward director's desired street improvements, how do we resolve that? Does that mean we have to vote on street improvements uses at the board level? But, if the ward director X has a list of 5 things in their ward, and then constituents call me and say they want a list of a different 5 things, and I represent those same ward constituents as ward director X does, I don't know how we decide what to do. And I brought that up for a couple weeks and really hadn't heard anything from anyone on how to figure it out. I know we got a very complicated 7-3 with 7 ward members and 3 at-larges, but that seems to be a real practical issue that we kind of keep seeming to push down the road. And I like to try to get some type of resolution on it before we cast our final votes tonight. So I'm just kind of throwing it out there, Mayor and City Manager. Hopefully someone can respond to me and give me their thoughts on how they think we should handle this, or if I need to call for a vote to figure this out.
Well, as it reads right now, and Mr. Attorney, please let me know, but as it reads right now, there's no defined policy on the resolution besides the allocations. It has not, my understanding, based on the reading of this resolution, it does not have a divvying up of the streets and drainage dollars. So that has not been stated in this standpoint. So the only way to have a divvying it up, whether it's 7 or 10, that would need to be included into the resolution, is my understanding. Mr. Moore, is that accurate, inaccurate?
Mayor, I hate to disagree.
That's why I asked the question. I could be wrong. That's why.
What we have before us on item 18 is just the ordinance calling the election. And what this does will outline exactly what's on the ballot on August the 9th. The way the board, I think there's probably 2 ways you can deal with this. The board can, by motion, a board member by motion can ask that they have a recommendation on how to divvy the money up. In 2012, I think it was a separate resolution that basically said we would take 10% off the top of the money. And Director Phillips, one thing I would say is you just mentioned street improvements, but I think you were talking about streets and drainage, which total about $81 million. And then we took 10% off the top and then divided equally amongst the 7 wards. And the only thing that I would say is I do believe that the city staff needs the flexibility to be able to do projects that, and I always refer to Bankhead Drive there in Ward 1, that a sinkhole developed, and I mean, we had to do that. And now that wasn't on Director Hendricks' Ward 1 list because we weren't aware of it at that time. So I would just hope that, again, I believe it's a separate action from this ordinance. I think the board deals with this ordinance and then decides how to divide up the $81 million. But I would hope that we still would have that flexibility to take some percentage off the top to do, and then, and Ally, you can, if you would pull up the list that I just went back and just to give a kind of a summary of how we've used the citywide money by ward and by project. And a lot of it was match. If we received, like from RDOT for Cantrell expansion, but you can see wards 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. These are how we have spent that not carryover, 10% citywide money since the bond issue and sales tax.
And I appreciate that, City Manager, and I'll go on record publicly saying I support the idea of having a 10% for city staff to make, to be nimble enough to address issues as they arise. And, I can't speak for Director Adcock, Director Computers, but we're all in the same boat as at-large directors. That 10%, which I'm in agreement with, doesn't have anything to do with us. That's not 10% for the at-large directors to say, here are the things that are important to me and what I'm hearing from, or what we're hearing from our constituents. So to me, I support that, but that's still a separate issue than what I'm bringing up. And if I'm hearing you correctly, City Manager, it sounds like I need to get a resolution that outlines what I think and then just put that before my colleagues. Am I hearing that correctly?
I think that's how we did it in 2012, but I also think you can make a motion and get a second, and then if that becomes the policy, then we know moving forward when we go out to our community meetings how the money will be divvied up.
Okay. Well, I would love to hear from my colleagues if anyone wants to chime in. But I guess I would note for our assistant city attorney, if we can get to work on that, and city manager put me in the queue to be on the next available board meeting so we can have that resolution discussed. I can, out of respect for my colleagues, I'm sure they want to have something in writing to look at so they can kind of think about it. But if we can just add that to the queue, city manager, I appreciate it. And if the assistant city attorney can add working on a resolution that discusses the distribution, division, whatever word you want to use, of the street improvements and drainage funds from the millage. With that, Mayor, unless my colleagues have anything, I'll love to hear from them. But if no one wants to chime in, that's all I have.
And Director Phillips, there are some other of your colleagues who are in the queue to speak, so they may address it from that standpoint. Mr. Moore, did you have a comment? Director Wyrick.
Thank you, Mayor. My question was not in regards to Director Phillips' request. However, I know when we sat down and looked at the dollars in 2012, all of the projects that we did were requested by citizens. It wasn't B.J. Wyrick's wish list. It was citizens that were wanting street improvements or drainage improvements. So I would think that Director Phillips' constituents and my constituents would be the same kind of folks. So having said that, my question has to deal with the language. Director Adcock brought it up, but is it not strange that we don't have that wording in front of us, or did it get distributed and I missed it? I would like to see the wording. I know you took new out, but it sounded like Mr. Carpenter was going to revise that paragraph. So do we have it somewhere that we can look at?
Sure, Ally, if you just pull the ordinance up, and I don't know if Mr. Russell or Mr. Taylor want to address where it was revised. Mr. Russell?
I think the only change we had was the Parks and Recreation Improvement Bonds.
Ellie, go down to question 6.
Yes, ma'am. Can you refresh your computer?
Question.
So, Mr. Russell, I wasn't here last week, but I believe there was the request that, well, it's not question 6, it was question 4, that new be removed. So,
We at Tom's request, we removed new. He had actually drafted some language, and we incorporated it in and sent it out to be here tonight. And it may be because he's left, he's not here.
no, it was revised and linked to
Yes,
on the agenda.
I can see it up here on this screen.
Right.
And it says the park and recreational improvements include the acquisition, construction, furnishing, equipping, and improving of park and recreational facilities. Then it goes on to say, including particularly Little Rock Zoo. Prior to that, it said new and existing. Those words it was rephrased to take that out. So that is the copy we did that's up on the screen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Director Pierce, did you take your hand down? Vice Mayor Hines?
As to the discussion of our resolutions about how we came up with those resolutions after we went out for public hearings with our folks, and much to Director Wyrick's credit, the projects were citizen-driven for our wards, and so I think that's where the input we got from those public hearings, and I think that's what we've got slated for this summer coming up, is to go out and have public hearings in our wards to get input from our citizens about where they would like to see streets drainage and park improvements made. So and I think we will have plenty of time between now and the election to get that set in stone on the hows and whats of how we're going to spend the money and pass the resolution.
Thank you so much. Director Phillips, is your hand still up?
Yes, sir, Mayor. And I appreciate Director Wyrick and Vice Mayor Hines with that context. And I want to be clear that I'm not just trying to do an Antoine list, but we all know all of our constituents do not see the world the same or have the same priorities. So there may be people in Ward 7, Director Wyrick, who both voted for me and you. A group of people show up at one meeting and tell you one thing and then email me and tell me a different thing. And I just don't know how we resolve that. And maybe I'm being I'm big on process. Maybe there's too much of my legal brain, but I'm trying to avoid a situation before it happens by having a process in place. And right now, I don't know if we do have a process in place if and when that happens. I want to be just as involved in how we spend these dollars as an at-large member, as my ward colleagues. So that's what I'm getting at. And if it makes more sense to wait until we do a few different meetings, I can be open to that. But I mean, we're in the middle of May and August is around the corner. So there's not a lot of time anyway. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking about this, and I'll work with the city attorney's office and get something before the board. And if we decide to vote on it or defer, we can, but I definitely want to get a process in place to avoid a potential situation down the line. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Director Adcock, is your hand still up?
Yes, it is. I agree, Bruce. Last time we did this in 2012, it worked out, in my opinion, perfect. Director Wyrick is correct. This was not driven by city ward directors. This was driven by the people in the wards. And Director Phillips, it looks to me like you're wanting input into every ward, or you just wanting input into Ward 5 where you live.
Director Adcock, I was elected to represent the entire city, so I would think I could have some input everywhere. That doesn't mean take over. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I would hope that my voice, no matter if you're in Ward 1 or Ward 7, would be heard. I mean, people, I think that's what I'm here to do. So I'm just trying to do my job.
Well, in the meetings that we had, all the ward people was there, all the ward of that area, but all the citizens was there, and they was the one that was working out these different projects and everything. They talked among themselves and made the plan. The ward director was just that person that was sitting there, taking their plan then and helping put it into action. But Mr. Moore, I completely support what we did last time, because I saw, even with the one pot, that it completely worked well for this whole city. Thank you. And as a ward director, I want to see it the same this time. Thank you.
Director Richardson?
Yes, Mayor, I hear what Director Phillips is saying, and I don't interpret your comments as trying to take over. I think the assumption is that we are having these community meetings, and I think it's in our best interest to make sure our at-large directors are included and or involved so that you can hear and have a chance to interact with the people that are telling us what they need and what they want to have happen. I think one of the things that Bruce just mentioned, that I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that a lot of it has to be driven by recommendations and expertise of staff that we have on board. I think he gave us a perfect example. I think the pothole or the whatever kind of hole, the sinkhole in Ward 1 was not on the list until staff, if I understood you correctly, staff saw that and included that as part of the list. So I think the assumption is that we're having meetings, and the meetings are attended by a diverse group of our constituents. And Director Phillips, I don't interpret your comments as trying to take over. I understand your desire and your feeling and your need to have some kind of involvement. Don't want us to make this too bureaucratic where we're not getting anything done and all, but I do think that there have been recommendations, Bruce, that each ward director have come to you before in the past, and we just saw examples of it a minute ago. And I think that when those have been presented in public forums, we've had opportunities to get feedback and or input from our at-large directors to either include or help edit or make sure that's inclusive of what they're hearing from some of our constituents as well. I may be talking to some people in Ward 2 that Director Phillips may not be talking to, and vice versa. So I think it would behoove us to make sure that we're taking that in consideration, and we have a comprehensive, full drawn out, full thought out process is going to take in all of the recommendations along with staff's expertise. Those who know. I can have my opinion on what needs to be done on one street, but I don't have any expertise in public works. And my constituents may have the same kind of feeling and same kind of thoughts and or consideration about and or desires, but they don't have the expertise that we have with staff. And I think Bruce has done a wonderful job. Bruce and Mayor, you guys have done a wonderful job in making sure that our staff has looked at some of the lists, and some of the things that are needed in different wards, and come back to us for specific recommendations about specific improvements and or work to be done in specific parts of our various wards. So I agree with you, Joan. I think it worked out just well. It worked out fine the way Bruce explained it and laid it out. And Antoine, I understand what you're saying as well. So I think that there's a place in the middle where we can meet and not make this too bureaucratic and too drawn out, and too much of a process that's going to be so cumbersome for us that we don't get anything done. We're just spinning our wheels and we're just meeting just to meet, which sometimes we do, sometimes, unfortunately. But I understand everything that's being said clearly, and I understand, Bruce, what you've done and how you've done it in the past, and how you did it in 2012, and how you've done it in other areas where we moved forward, where we've had recommendations and funding recommendations for infrastructure improvement, curb and drainage, street resurfacing, and improvements in our area. And I think it's incumbent upon me that when I get those recommendations and that information from my constituents, Joan, that I run that by and make sure you and Dean and Antoine have a look at that and see that yourselves so that you can have that kind of information as well.
Thank you so much. Director Wright, and then we have Director Warwick. Is your hand still up, Director Warwick?
Thank you, Mayor Scott.
All right.
I just wanted to remind us that the voters have not passed this yet, and people attend the meetings and they give us feedback. And I recall the public meetings that I held in Ward 6, and people made recommendations on what they would like to see. Staff took those recommendations and put pen to paper and came up with a price, and we came back and we shared that with them. And then they prioritized based upon what the numbers said. I don't want us to get so caught up into what staff wants that it's not what the people saying they want, because they are the voters and they're the ones who are gonna have to pass this, so we gotta keep that in mind. I don't want a cumbersome process, but what we did previously has worked, and I just like us to keep that in mind, and that we have just all we've done is vote to call the election, is what I thought. Is that correct?
This is voters to call the election.
Vote to call the election, so I just know what we did previously worked, and people understood what the dollars were and what we could and could not do. And we just need to understand that it has to be a public forum, and I had wanted at least 2 meetings, so I hope we can get that in before the election. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Director Phillips, is your hand still up?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Final comments. I just want to appreciate people engaging in this conversation with me. I know sometimes we reserve comments, so I want to thank my colleagues for engaging with me, first of all. Secondly, I want to be clear. I mean, obviously, I wasn't on the board 10 years ago. I understand everyone saying the process worked, but I hadn't seen anything or heard anything from anyone to say that me in my position as the at-large director, how I fit into that process. I mean, I don't know how Director Adcock and Director Computers handled it 10 years ago, but I hadn't heard anything to say how I fit in. And I want to be a part of the process. I don't want it to be a complicated or a bureaucratic process that Director Wright and Director Richardson spoke against. I share that concern, but I'm here just like everyone else, and I want to be involved in the representation of our people and making our city better. So I just want that to be clear. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Phillips.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Moore.
Director Phillips, earlier in the conversation, you requested that a resolution be crafted for the next agenda. And are you going to outline the parameters of that, of what you would like?
I'm happy to do that now, or I can do it offline with the city attorney's office, and then obviously we get a draft. It'll be on the agenda for everyone to look at, and we can discuss during the agenda meeting. But if you think it makes sense for me to outline it now, I can do that, or it may make better for the sake of time for me to just work with the city attorney's office, get something written up and share it with the board.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you're still, so as we start preparing the agenda, that we that we know that that's something that you expect to have on the May 31st agenda for June 7th.
Correct.
So from a process standpoint, Mr. Moore, does, with the 2-week time frame that's given us to have issues before the board, would that require a 2/3 vote, 2/3 support tonight to add that to the agenda next week?
We're actually 3 weeks out because we got a 4th Tuesday next.
That's right. Okay, that's right.
But let me just say, we do need to deal with it because depending on when we have our ward meetings, or when we have the ward meetings, one of the things the public's going to want to know is, okay, we have $10 million per ward or $8 million per ward, and that's going to drive a lot of the conversation. So that's why I just want to be sure. I'm going to work real hard with the ward members to get these meetings set up because we need to start meeting, but we also need to, at some point, kind of have a concrete decision on, after we take $8 million off the top to do citywide type projects. Do you divide it by 7? Do you divide it by 10? And I think those are the questions that I believe the board's going to have to answer in a policy manner pretty quick.
Thank you, Director Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't here in 2012 either, but this is just a question. Dean, Joan, did you all go to any of these ward-specific meetings, or were you?
Attended every one of them.
Every single one of them. In my opinion, I always thought this was citizen-driven. And Director Phillips, it seems like to me that your job would be to obviously listen to your constituents, which are everybody here in the city, and encourage them to go to their meetings to weigh in, and for you to participate and go to all the meetings as well. I never for a second thought that anybody was going to have a pet project and that we were going to be making the calls. I thought we were going out to the public. Public Works would weigh in. And I think that has worked very well for the city. Is this the third time, Bruce, that we've done it this way? So anyway, I wasn't here either, but I thought this was completely citizen-driven. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if I can, Mayor.
Director Phillips.
Yeah, I just want to respond to City Manager Moore and my colleague, Director Peck. City Manager, I agree with you. That's why I wanted to try to get the resolution sooner than later, because I do think that framework is needed before we have our community meeting. So I'll work with City Attorney's Office and get that as soon as possible. And Director Peck, my understanding was citizen-led too. I just been on the board long enough to know that all our citizens don't see the world the same. And I've been on the board long enough to know that some citizens call you, some call me, and vice versa. Some in your work call Director Adcock or Director Computers or me or you. Every person in the city has 4 people that represents them that they can reach out to. And that doesn't even include the mayor and his office. So this is a complicated process because we got a complicated structure. And I didn't invent the structure, but that's what we have. And I'm just trying to avoid a situation down the line where we have a group of constituents who feel like they hadn't been heard because their list didn't make the top 5. And then I go to Director X and say, hey, they were there. They said this. They didn't make the list. I'm going to try to do my job in representing them, making sure they're heard. Then Director X said, well, here's what I heard. Here's what's important to me. So this is what we're dealing with. And then the folks who've reached out to me, who attended the meeting, feel like they're not involved in the process. If we vote on something, we just make it clear on the front end and say, hey, those are the rules. Them are the rules, and those are what we're playing by. Right now, sounds like we don't really have rules per se. And to the city manager standpoint, that we kind of need them as we go to the city, these city community meetings, so people know, hey, we got $10 million per ward. Here's what you can do with 10 million as opposed to what you could do with 15 million or whatever the numbers are. So I'm just trying to do stuff on the front end. I know I'm making it more complicated. I know I wasn't here to, lament or praise the prior process. The only thing I know is what's in front of me, and I'm just trying to be involved and do what people elected me to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Director Phillips. Seeing no other questions from members of Mr. Moore?
Would it be possible then to deal with this in a special call meeting, just that his Director Phillips resolution on May 31st? We got to get these meetings scheduled, and if we went to June the 7th, I mean, that's, now we're into the second week of June before we can start scheduling. If the board, we're scheduled to meet at 4 o'clock on the 31st. If we could deal with that in a special call meeting and then have our agenda session, I think that would give us more time to.
Do I see that from members of the board, that's something that you guys would want to consider?
Yes.
All right. Well,
That works for me, Mayor.
we'll schedule a special call meeting on May 31st, and we'll do the normal procedure of notifying the press 2 hours before, but members of the press know that we're going to have a special call meeting at 4 o'clock on May 31st to take up Director Phillips' resolution, forthcoming resolution. All right, we've had discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Aye.
Please say nay. Ayes have it. We are now done with city business. Members of the board, we have one communications card from Mr. Luke Scrable.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to exercise my First Amendment rights. I submitted two FOI requests to you, Mayor, on April the 6th. You did not send them back to April the 13th, 2 days past the 72 hours. Disobeying the FOI Act. You rubber stamped them with the usual, there are no public records responsive to the request, violating the FOI law. I complained to the city attorney. He sent back on the 19th, sending back minutes that were not officially approved from the 15th of December 2020. 8 hand-picked racist friends that were speaking against Director Hines' Resolution 21 to remove the police chief for just cause, and then 8 more members out of a dozen of the mayor's racist hand-picked friends to speak against Director Hines' resolution to remove the police chief for just cause. Now, the problem is that there were more than a dozen members, but the list was incomplete. And then on the 29th, there were some white citizens from the Little Rock Police Department and Russ Raycup. So the list was fabricated and the list was dishonest, Mayor. You didn't obey the FOI law, and you're disregarding and putting yourself above the law. And this is why you're going to be replaced by either Greg Henderson or Steve Landers, which we hope that after they're signed into office after November 1st election, that after they sign their oath of office, they will try to operate the city with the attitude that they're not above, excuse me, the law, and that the law will apply to them. Now, I'm asking the Board of Directors tonight, who also sign oath of office, to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Arkansas, to go into executive section tonight to discuss an out-of-court settlement for me, so I don't have to go and waste taxpayer dollars and the city attorney's time.
Mr. Scrable, your 3 minutes are up.
Well, you don't obey the law, so why should I?
Mr. Scrable, your 3 minutes are up.
You're forcing me to file a lawsuit against you.
Mr. Scrable, this will be my last time.
You know the law. Why don't you know
Mr.
better
Scrable, you are
than
now
to
excused from
disobey
the
the
meeting.
law?
You're now excused from the meeting.
Sir?
You're now excused from the meeting.
Well, you're excused too, sir.
God bless you. Members of the board, are any questions as we conclude tonight's business?
Motion to adjourn, Mayor.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Ayes have it.